I thank the Prime Minister for his remarks and remind the judges that they should not score any debater until they have heard all the speeches. We shall now hear the first speaker for the opposition. If the member of opposition intends to consent to government definitions or to introduce a counter plan, it must do during this address.
Hello everyone. First, Madam Speaker, I would like to make a point. The Prime Minister, I admire him for his courage to answer the questions that were raised from the opposition, but that also shows us that in a way he also believes that brutality is a way that absolute monarch should get. Now, throughout history, as though he presented very interesting points throughout history of the monarchs that did rule and did gain much power, Madam Speaker, they also, in the end, failed. As we can see in our modern world today, most of the countries that succeed are not the countries that has an absolute monarch. From our history, you can see that the greatest rulers, even though they were true absolute monarchs, in the end they showed weakness and failed. The Prime Minister supports the absolute monarchy by saying it's unjust, it's just. But an example can be Louis XIV, why it's not just. Even though he ruled for a long time, for 1654 to 1715, eventually he failed. He believed that in his power he can erase rules, he can take taxes and use them in order to make his power of the army stronger in order to conquer. But because of that, he didn't estimate the right amount of money, and then his country owed debts. Hitler, he was also a great monarch. Not exactly a monarch, but a dictator. He crucified Jews, but he ended up losing in World War II. People saw him as an enemy and understood that this outrageous power that he gained must be stopped. And together, they stopped it. The Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, also believes it's effective, which it's not. And another example from history can be Gustav IV Adolf of Sweden. He was an absolute monarch from 1792 to 1809, but he failed as ruler. Unlike his father, Gustav III, he was pious and superstitious, which made him weak as a ruler. Yet, even though he was weak, he still ruled with what you can say was force. In order to show his people that he is worthy of being an absolute monarch, he stubbornly accepted war against France, even though Russia was with them. Russia is a big country. They had lots of power during that time. But not only Russia, but also Denmark were allied with France. By doing that, he set up his country for despair, and in 1809, his ruling ended. Inhumane, you also believe it might be, but it's also of our ideas that it's wrong. Inhumane, the king can change laws on
Madam Speaker, may the member of the opposition entertain questions?
I will answer all questions in the end. Kings can change laws on whims. They should have the power for that. It's rulers that are smart, as you said, throughout history, there were absolute monarchs that were smart, that could change rules. But most rulers, as known by history, that were absolute monarchs, eventually failed. They didn't succeed in running the country the way it should have run, and it just corrupted. The country was not. They weren't worthy of having such power. The king would raise taxes only for funds and for their parties or clothes and expensive splurge, such as Marie Antoinette. They would use all this money for themselves, for their wealth, while the peasants would starve and die. Now, Madam Speaker, I would like to ask, what would happen to our country if absolute monarchy would take over? Who would rule? Would the Prime Minister rule? And if he would the Crown Minister, what would happen to her? Would she still be part of the government? I think not. As known,
Madam Speaker, would the opposition entertain a question?
All questions will be answered in the end.
Boo, you can't say
Uh, so as you know, so basically the absolute monarch has all the power in the country. He has the power to make decisions that might at first seem right, but at the end will show differently. But as the opposition, we were supposed, and we are suggesting a different plan. A plan that will work for all of us, I hope. Which is limited monarchy. Another type of monarchy in which the ruler has power, has the respect it deserves, but it cannot decide everything by himself. Examples from our time are two great countries that live in peace, everything is right in them, and they have limited monarchy for a very long time. First example would be England. The limited monarchy started in 1689, when the English Bill of Rights was written. Among many other rules stated in that, all stated the monarch or ruler cannot decide or pass laws without the consultation and the help of...
Madam Speaker?
Here, here!
Point of order.
Well, what would you like to say?
Is it true that the opposition is unable to deny the question and say all at the end?
If the member of opposition wishes to answer all questions at the end, you may allow him to. Proceed.
As I was saying, England is a limited monarchy. The laws of the Bill of Rights stated, one of them, that the monarch or ruler cannot decide or pass law without the agreement and consult with the parliament. Which, if you could relate to today, if the absolute monarchy would take over our country, this parliamentary debate wouldn't happen, Madam Speaker. The monarch would have all the power to himself, and he would not need or even want the consult of us. Well, so as you can see, England ruled for 321 years for constitutional monarchy or limited monarchy, and is still running today. The same as with Netherlands, but their country, it started in 1813, and the constitutional monarchy is running for 197 years. So that is why we believe limited monarchy would be a good plan, an opposite plan, unlike absolute monarchy. Thank you. Oh, question?
Yes. You were talking about Sweden and how their decision to go against France, even though France had Russia by their side, was bad. Are you aware that Russia was an absolute monarchy? Because you said it was extremely powerful.
I agree that Russia was true. It was an absolute monarchy and it was very powerful. But as known, Russia also, after a while, there was a war because of that absolute monarchy.
Here, here!
During that time, it was true that Russia was a strong continent, and that was why it helped France win the war. But because of that, also all this power that Russia all just gained, it made people start revolt, which is not what would be good for the country.
The time is up.
Thank you for your remarks. I now call upon the Crown Minister to deliver her speech.